There is a small white shack on the lawn in front of Tate Britain. It looks exactly like the very thing it is, namely the concrete cast of a chicken shed. The windows are blind and the door could never open to let the birds out, for the object is a solid block, heavy and impenetrable, unlike the airy structure it repeats. And yet it is still, first and last, a chicken shed. Or is it the art of Rachel Whiteread turns things inside out? This piece, hailed as a major new work at Tate Britain, though it's anything but, and the artist calls it shy, is a cast of the space inside the shed. There's a clue in the fact that the window frames are indented, instead of standing out. But so what? The object on the lawn, literal, stolid, and translated, retains the form of the shed. It is a sculptural tautology. Whiteread, born 1963, has been casting these so-called negative spaces for 3 decades. The original idea comes from the US artist Bruce Nauman, whose A cast of the space under my chair 19,658 spells out a method, if not the varying effects. Whiteread has gone further, casting the innards of a hot water bottle and a mattress, the undersides of a table, the space behind a fireplace or surrounding a bath. Her works run from the modest to the monumental, most famously the interior of an entire house, cast in plaster, resin, concrete to rubber, occasionally in metal, mundane, and lately in papier-mâché, actively hideous. Everything she makes balances the possibility of poetry against the risk of banality. Torso, 1988. Photograph copyright Rachel Whiteread. This is not necessarily intrinsic to the objects themselves. Take the beautiful piece torso that opens this enormous exhibition. Cast in plaster, from a hot water bottle, this little thing lies on its back, vulnerable, pale and turning slightly, as if troubled in sleep. Whiteread made this sculpture in 1988, and it remains unsurpassed. One can say this because the artist has been casting hot water bottles ever since. There are 9 more in this show, in clear resin, yellow wax, flesh pink plaster, each differently swollen or flexed. Not one has the same potency or charge. It is the same with the mattresses. Some look precisely like mattresses, others appear less familiar, most are propped against the wall. But shallow breath is slightly slumped, as if exhausted, or trying its best to inhale and exhale in the midnight hours. There is, in short, a marvelous analogy between the original object, the sculptural form, and the title. And all the nuances of solitude and anxiety are carried without any resort to the anthropomorphic. There is a spellbinding quietude to these early works. People still go on tiptoe to look into the kitchen sink, as if there might something stirring there. Closet, the cast of a wardrobe covered in black felt, still makes the childhood fear of such interior darkness both visible and solid. Cell, her cast of a grate and the space behind it, goes to the quick of one's curiosity about the secret world behind the fireplace. And the towering white plaster untitled stairs, from 2001, zooms up and down to nowhere, with overtones of Piranesi and Escher, like the flights of steps in Trapped Dreams. Like the flights of steps in Trapped Dreams, entitled Stairs, 2001 by Rachel Whiteread at Tate Britain, where the interior walls have been removed for this huge retrospective. Photograph James Gourley wreck Shutterstock that whiteness has become Whiteread's own trademark somewhat. It diverts attention from the original object, emphasizing the status of these works as sculptures. A cardboard box, a bath, a sink, cast in white plaster, a concrete, all lose their individuality to become universal forms, and perhaps even quasi-abstract. There is a work here called entitled White Slab, and its provenance is completely unclear. It looks far more like a work of American minimalism than any kind of household object. Replication can border on repetition. Facsimile doesn't always lead to transformation. Whiteread's debt to America is everywhere obvious, especially to Bruce Nauman, Donald Judd and Carl Andre, whose bricks have their echoes in her many casts of floors that precisely resemble floors. And here is an obvious division in her work. Some casts produce recognizable facsimiles. The space around a bath, when cast, produces another bath. But the 100 casts of spaces beneath assorted chairs, made in glowing colored resins, translucent as Pear's soap, do not evoke chairs. Some look like tiny telephone boxes, others like miniature cenotaphs or tower blocks. Stretching away into the distance, they suggest a whole metropolis of small buildings. The emphasis is architectural rather than human. That can feel obdurate, and even chilling, especially in the largest works. In 2003, Whiteread cast the interior space of Room 101 at the BBC's Broadcasting House, supposedly the inspiration for the torture chamber in George Orwell's 1984. The colossal white block, with no point of entry or exit, is a properly ominous presence in this show. But then a nearby collection of cardboard boxes yields nothing more interesting than a dozen white blocks, ribbed with corrugations. If you care to look closely for the purposes of identification, the arrangement feels arbitrary. The concept, whatever it might have been, is lost. Untitled 100 Spaces, 1995, 100 casts of spaces beneath assorted chairs, translucent as Pears soap. Photographed Olga Akmanap. Getty Images. The interior walls have been removed at Tate Britain to create a single gallery the size of an aircraft hangar. This means that every work has exactly the same context. Without natural lighting, some of the transparent doors lose their lovely volatility. Without smaller spaces, some of the more modest pieces struggle to speak. Shown all together, what's more, Whiteread's work starts to look almost obsessively neat and overdetermined, nothing whatsoever left to chance. Which may simply be the nature of her modus operandi, of course. Cast the inside of a box and you get a cube that looks just like a box. Cast the inside of a can and you get a cylinder. Geometric forms inevitably predominate, but when she presents loo rolls in tidy lines, or Coke cans on shelves, or wallpaper rolls on chairs, they appear both trivial and willfully domestic. Whiteread works in series, as this show makes clear. Replication can border on repetition. Facsimile, no matter in what medium, color, configuration or scale, doesn't always lead to transformation. But when these elements are in perfect alignment, she is a poet of the past. This was the case with House in 1993, that pale ghost of a building commemorating the lives of its lost East End inhabitants in the translucent water tower. 1998, high up in the Soho skyline, that became a monument to New York's vanishing history. And in the celebrated Holocaust Memorial 2000, a library turned inside out, in the center of Vienna's Judenplatz. In this show, curiously, the strongest building is the smallest, a cast of a doll's house made out of glass. It is a wonderful sight, ghostly and gleaming, like a miniature palace of ice. And as if fulfilling some childhood fantasy, you can see right through the walls into every room, even when the doors are closed, looking down translucent corridors into all these shining chambers of the mind. Ghost 2, 2009, like a miniature palace of ice. Photograph copyright Rachel Whiteread, courtesy of the artist and Mike Bruce. Rachel Whiteread is at Tate Britain, London, until the 21st of January 2018.